Dick's father was an electrician and started his own business in 1955. His mother was a stay-at-home wife, mother, and excellent cook. Her pies and pie crusts were outstanding. After graduation in 1952 from Holt High School, he attended Albion College and graduated in 1956 with an economics and business degree. Dick entered the Army in September of 1956, and after basic training and finance school, he was assigned to the finance office at Fort Polk, Louisiana. Joanne graduated from Albion College in 1957, and they were married in August of 1957. After 8 months, he was sent to Central Finance and Accounting Office, Europe, Heidelberg, Germany. Joanne joined him 2 months later, and their son Christopher was born in the Army Hospital in Heidelberg. After discharge in 1959 from the Army, Dick worked for 7 years in 3 different manufacturing companies. Their daughter Jill was born in 1962. In 1966, he was approached by the executive director of Pentecostal Hospital in Hastings, Michigan, for the position of office manager. A year later, he became the executive director. That's a big jump. After 20 years at Pentecostal, he was approached by the president of Bronson Hospital to be the first president of Hospital Network Incorporated, an affiliation of 4 smaller hospitals and Bronson hospitals. Dick served in this position until his retirement in 1999. Friendship Village and all your visitors, please welcome Dick Fluke, who will present the road to becoming a hospital CEO.
Thank you, Sandy. Can you hear me in the back row? First, thank you, Sandy, for being chairman of the Life Stories program.
There.
It takes a little bit of work, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
And thanks to Life Enrichment ladies for all your help. I'd like to introduce my family in the front row. Christopher, our son, raise your hand. Chris's daughter.
Erin.
There she is. Erin. Our daughter Jill, and you all know my wife Joanne, and Chris's wife Laura. As Sandy said, I was born February 7, 1934, Lansing, Michigan, in my parents' apartment on the 2nd floor above a pharmacy. On December 15, 1935, 22 months later, my sister Judy was born in our parents' home in Lansing. In those days, the OB doctor who my mother went to did all of his deliveries at home unless he thought there would be a problem, and then he had him go to the hospital. Of course, that was the middle of the Depression. At age 4, I was admitted to St. Lawrence Hospital, Lansing, for IV fluids. Here is a copy of the total hospital bill. The top $12 is for 4 days in the hospital, room and board. 50 cents for medicines, $6 for lab, $7.50 for x-rays, total $26. Things have changed. And here is a picture. What am I doing wrong? Over here? Do I have to point them? Here is a picture of the little sailor boy, 1939, ready to go off and defend the country. In 1946, our family moved from Lansing to Holt, a small town 5 miles south of Lansing. In 1947, my parents drove to California in a 1941 Ford. Whoop, that went too far.
There you go.
It's got to be facing that way. Okay. In that small auto was Dad, Mother, Aunt Hilda, my father's sister, Sister Judy, and me. A good thing Judy and I were the size of a broomstick. We went to California on Route 66, and the song Get Your Kicks on Route 66 was made popular the previous year, so we had it on the radio every day. Our destination was San Bernardino, California, where my maternal grandmother was spending the winter with her son and his family. Grandma returned to Michigan with us, so then we had 6 in the 41 Ford. What an educational experience for a 13-year-old boy. A great introduction to geography and the U.S. of A. Moving from Lansing to Holt, I found out how easy it is to be a big fish in a small pond. There were only 57 kids in my class. Therefore, it was easy to participate in many school activities. Sports, football, basketball, track. Oop, I hit the wrong one.
There you go.
Track. I was a high jumper. Marching band, drum major, concert band, saxophone and clarinet, dance band, debate team, student council, and junior and senior plays.
Oh my goodness.
Some people would think I didn't study a lot much, and that was probably true. I graduated high school in '52 and on my way to Albion College. Not sure why Albion. The Korean War was on, and I really wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I wanted to shoot down a commie for mommy. At Albion, I majored in economics and business and completed my student teaching in bookkeeping at the high school. I thought I might become a high school principal. My senior year at Albion, I did go to the Naval Reserve Air Station, Grosse Isle, Michigan, to have a physical to join the Navy Air Force. I thought it would be fun to land a $1 billion plane on a bouncing aircraft carrier. Due to a deviated septum causing only half volume in my right nostril, I failed the physical. So much for shooting down commies for money. I was number 3 on the draft board, and because I thought it was proper that you would be willing to serve your country and not fake bone spurs, I went to an Army recruiting station. They talked me into signing up for 3 years and receiving a direct commission in the Army Finance Corps. In basic training, I qualified for Officers Candidate School, but would need to sign up for another year. I was committed to 3 years to receive a direct commission, so why sign up for another year to go to Officers Candidate School? Joanne and I had been dating my senior year at Albion, her junior year. She majored in history and political science and was interested in working for the U.S. State Department. She had been accepted to graduate school at George Washington University, Washington, D.C. She contacted the State Department. to find out what kind of job a Phi Beta Kappa Albion grad and a master's from George Washington in foreign service would have. She was told, typist. Remember, this is 1957, ladies. Not a secretary, a typist who typed from a document someone handed her. Well, she said, self, you can do better than that. You can marry a private in the Army, making $69 a month, who will soon be a second lieutenant. After basic training, I went to finance school, Fort Ben Harrison, Indianapolis, Indiana, but no direct commission. Following finance school, I was assigned to the finance office, Fort Polk, Louisiana. It's not Louisiana, it's Louisiana. If you were in Louisiana, it's Louisiana. Joanne and I married in Hastings, Michigan, August 10, 1957. There was no adequate married housing in Fort Polk, Louisiana. So we pulled a new house trailer from Michigan. I'm going to keep that on the wrong side. Oh, that's basic training. Ooh. That's the wedding. I'm missing them. There we go. So we pulled a house trailer from Michigan to Louisiana. After 8 months in Louisiana, it was announced that the Army was closing Fort Polk. My orders were to be sent to Europe. I talked to a sergeant in our finance office who had a directory of every Army post in the world. He said, we're going to get you assigned to the best finance office in Europe. And in his directory, it said the Central Finance and Accounting Office, Europe, Heidelberg, Germany. He said, you will send a letter to the Commanding General, Headquarters, Europe. The letter will state what a great leader he is and how it would be a privilege to serve in his command. Now remember, I'm a specialist fourth class. I said, I'll get court-martialed for all this BS. He said, trust me, that's how you do it. Well, for those of you who have been in the Army and other services, you know the sergeants really run the service. If you want something done, talk to a sergeant. I was then sent to Fort Dix, New Jersey for processing. As usual, standing in a long line for the processing. Lieutenant doing the processing said, Specialist Fluke, get your butt up here. I thought, uh-oh, here's the beginning of the court-martial. I went to the front of the line and he said, is your dad a U.S. Senator? I said, no. He said, he's got to be a member of Congress. I said, no, he's an electrician in Holt, Michigan. He said, well, we got a letter from General XYZ, and he says you're to be sent to the Central Finance and Accounting Office, Europe. Joanne arrives 2 months later, June 1958, in Heidelberg, Germany. We had a third floor walk-up apartment near the base, and our son Chris was born November 19, 1958, in the Army hospital. Now, there's another old story about Army hospitals, but that's for another day. I never received the direct commission promised by the recruiting sergeant, alias used car salesman. I learned later that the Army had canceled the Finance Corps direct commission program. Then, in 1959, my last 6 months in the Army, the U.S. Congress, in their wisdom, in a budget reduction mode, froze all military promotions. That affected me, but it surely affected the career military people. I was doing the job of an E6, but was only an E4. I did receive a lovely certificate of appreciation from a lieutenant colonel finance officer. And it did mention that I would do an outstanding work as an E4 in my E6 responsibilities, but no promotion. I was discharged in June 1959. Joanne and Chris, our 6-month-old son, and I were living with her parents in Hastings and my parents in Hope. Well, I needed a job. Let's review Fluke's work experience on his resume. 1948, 1949, ages 14 to 15, mowing lawns with the old push lawnmower at 50 cents a lawn. 1950, age 16, Boy Scout camp, washing dishes, $5 a week, plus room and board. 1951, age 17, soda jerk and local pharmacy. 1952-53, ages 18 and 19, first 2 summers in college, Consumers Power, Gas Division, Lansing, Michigan, digging ditches. And we were using shovels, not the power equipment they have today. But I was in good shape. 1954-55, ages 21-22, last 2 summers in college, McFadden Corporation, Lansing. They sold school furniture and school buses. Another college kid and I worked in the warehouse. And the 1953-56, 3 years in college, working in the college dining room. I acquired a job September 59 in the personnel office, E.W. Bliss, Hastings, Michigan. E.W. Bliss made hydraulic presses, and they had 1,100 employees in Hastings, a big employer for a small town. While working at Bliss, I started a Master's of Business program at Western Michigan University, Knights. In 2 years, January '61, I received a call from the management of Holiday Manufacturing Company, Hastings, for a position of office manager. Holiday Manufacturing made fishing rods, and being a fisherman, that was a great fit. We had times when we had to field test rods, which meant we took the canoes, floated down the Thornapple River from Nashville, Michigan to Hastings, and tested the rods. December 8, 1962, our daughter Jill was born in Pentecostville, Hastings, Michigan. More about Pentecostville later. 2 years later, 1964, Holiday Manufacturing Company was sold to True Temper Company and was moving to Miami, Florida. We were not interested in moving to Miami, so the accounting firm for Holiday Manufacturing referred me to Simpson Lee Paper Company, Vicksburg, Michigan, for the position of corporate accountant. Also in 1964, after 4 years of commuting nights from Hastings to Kalamazoo, some of them in major snowstorms, I completed my MBA at Western. In early 1966, I received a phone call from Jack Bay, Director, Pennock Hospital, Hastings, Michigan. He stated he would like me to come back to Hastings and work at the hospital as his business manager, later referred to as Chief Financial Officer. My reply was, I don't think so, Jack. And that's how I became involved in hospital work. Jack said, let's get together with Joanne and his wife Jan for dinner and talk about it. He needed someone like me to update the business office because there was a new government program starting in 1966, and it was called Medicare. Who said that first? Okay. You get a prize. Well, that's Hastings. I was supposed to show that. In case you don't know where Hastings is, you got Grand Rapids, Lansing, Battle Creek, Kalamazoo. Hastings is right in the middle. Now,
Hand off the gift.
hmm?
You want me to hand off the gift? Oh, you're gonna go.
Oh, you gotta go. Okay, doctor, you have your choice of door 1, door 2, or door 3.
Let's go for 2.
Door 2, okay. Let's see what was in door 1. Hope it's not working here.
It's too far away.
Maybe you're too far away.
Too far.
Give me one click on door 1. You could have had a brand new car. You said door 2, right? Let's see what's on door 3. Another click. You could have had a 2-week trip to Hawaii in January. And let's see what's in door 2. You got snickered. A snicker. See, I could have been an Army recruiting sergeant. I said I did not want to spend the rest of my life as a business manager in a small hospital. Jack said I would not need to because with Medicare, there would be lots of opportunities in healthcare. Joanne was opposed because we had built her Cape Cod dream house in Vicksburg, and I would take a pay cut to go to a smaller hospital as business manager. Now you have to understand these titles change. Today, that same position is called Chief Financial Officer. I was only at the hospital 9 months, and Jack said, we have to talk. He had 3 job offers and would be leaving Pennock for one of them. So in March 1966, I was appointed Pennock Hospital Director, later the title Executive Director, and then President CEO. It was the same job, just different titles as hospital moved to corporate titles. There's Pennock Hospital. At the time, there was a man by the name of Peter Drucker, who was, number 1, an author of several management books. Number 2, a Wall Street Journal writer. Number 3, a visiting professor at U of M and other universities. Number 4, a management consultant. In one of his books, he said, hospitals are the most complex organizational structure to manage. Now, This is a larger hospital. I just drew it up. It's probably not like Bronson is today, but you have your board, your CEO, you got finance, you probably have a chief operating officer, you may have an executive vice president, and you have all these different departments and services. That's the way even a industrial organization board would look, or any other business. But in hospitals, you have one other factor, and that's square up there on the right called medical staff. They're a whole different duck, right? And it makes operating a hospital much more complex than operating a normal business. The medical staff does receive its ability to practice at the hospital from the board, and actually I should have had some dotted lines over to the CEO and then down to the next slide. But the medical staff is not like anyone else in the hospital who has to follow the chain of command up. So the medical staff makes operating a hospital completely different as far as direct management. And Peter Drucker said, smaller hospitals are more difficult to manage than larger hospitals. Well, why is that? No, I'm way ahead. I'm missing one. Oh, there it is. No, that should have said, no, that's small. We're good. Okay, smaller hospital, why? Well, lack of support. You see, I had about 12 departments reporting directly to me. We didn't have a chief operating officer. We didn't have an executive vice president. So all of these people would report to me, and that was common in smaller hospitals. If you read a management magazine, the first thing they say is the CEO, executive director, whatever term you want to use, should not have 12 people reporting to you. 3, maybe 4. So in a smaller hospital, you are dealing with every department and every service directly. Unfortunately, I did not know about Mr. Peter Drucker until after a few years in my hospital career. When I became director of Pennock Hospital, the troubles began. Yes, we had troubles right here in River City. There were only 14 physicians on the medical staff, and within a few months, 2 died and 2 had to retire. Of the remaining, only one trained surgeon, 1 trained OB/GYN, and the remaining were general practitioners doing anesthesia, minor surgery, OB, house calls, and covering the ER from their office, home, high school function, or golf course. But that was normal for a smaller hospital in the 60s. With the loss of 4 doctors, the patient census dropped and we were running in the red. The Board of Trustees had a special meeting without me. Not a good thing when the board meets without their chief officer. And after the special board meeting informed me that in the next 30 days, I needed to present a plan to cut expenses 10%. How do you do that? Management 101, delegate. I had an emergency meeting of our department heads, told them they had 21 days to cut expenses and present a written report. One department head said his department was too important to reduce expenses 10%. I said, Leonard, you know, and everybody else at this table knows, I don't know a damn thing about running a hospital lab. If I have to cut expenses, the only place I can see is your job. We got his attention. All departments turned in excellent expense reduction reports, which my secretary put together in an impressive binder. It wasn't long before we were operating with a surplus. Several years later, one of the board members told me they would have been willing to accept 5%. I learned early in my hospital career that you cannot have a hospital without physicians, although we'd like to do it. Therefore, my number one priority was physician recruiting. In the mid and late 1960s, there was not a large supply of family physicians for smaller communities, and specialists were told by the residency directors not to go to small communities. Also, there was little existing office space in Hastings and limited existing physicians to take in partners. In 1968, a year after I became the executive director, a few hospital board members, a few docs, and I had a meeting in our home to discuss physician recruiting. After the discussion, the board member said, "Dick, you have 30 days to present us with plans to build a physician's office building." That Pentagon board like 30-day deadlines. The next day I had a meeting with a local lumberyard building designer and the largest contractor in town to meet to develop plans for a building attached to the hospital, and that's important. The Hastings Savings and Loan the next day called and volunteered to finance the building. The building construction started in '68 with 5 local physicians moving in when it was finished. We needed some local docs in the building to help pay the mortgage, just as Friendship Village, Kalamazoo, needs residents in the new facility to pay the bonds. After 2 years, 1971, because of success in physician recruiting, the physician's office building was filling up and we needed to build an addition. When we built that in '69, we weren't sure it was going to be successful, and 2 years later we had to do an addition. In addition to the office building, in 1971, we needed a formal recruiting plan. Okay, the building on the left was the original one, and we were building it with limited budget, so we built a bi-level, half a flight down, half a flight up, no elevator. Bad mistake. We built the second building on the right, normal, first floor, second floor, added an elevator that actually served both buildings because they're connected in the middle. So we corrected our mistake on the first one of going cheap, no elevator, but then how do people with wheelchairs, walkers, crutches manage the stairs. In addition to the office building, in 1971, we needed a formal recruiting plan. Nine years later, 1980, the Michigan Hospital Association asked me to write an article for the MHA magazine. By that time, we had been successful, and they wanted an article in their, okay, we'll stay there. So, the magazine article I wrote covered 4 points. Number 1, to establish need to demonstrate to a prospective physician, you need to document it. We had not documented it, and there was no other smaller hospital in Michigan documenting need. They just say to a physician, we need a doc, we need a doc. And then they say, well, how do you know? Well, we get a lot of people that don't have a doctor. Well, just by telling them we need a doc did not work. We acquired recommended physician-patient ratios from the Michigan Health Council, East Lansing, and the publication Medical Economics. With this hard black and white information, we were able to produce a document by physician specialty, individual specialties, and by general practice, the population by zip code in our service area, and the number of residents, and you put those together in a nice document, and it says, see, we have 10,000 people here in this area, and only one doc. The documentation we have shows we should have 3 more. So that really made a difference. The second thing in the article and in our plan is commitment. Commitment of time by existing physicians and the hospital CEO. Some smaller hospitals were relying on the Chamber of Commerce or other community organization to do the physician recruiting. I even had one smaller hospital administrator tell me, I don't do physician recruiting, that's not my job. I said, how many have you recruited? He said, we haven't recruited any. I said, okay, because only physicians and the hospital CEO talks the language and can make commitments to the prospective doc. An example of a commitment is when we recruited 2 doctors because we made contact with them in their medical school training and kept in touch with them through their residency, a commitment of 7 years. The normal visit by a prospective physician was from late Friday to Sunday afternoon. That is a weekend of time committed by 2 or 3 doctors on the recruiting committee and Joanne and me. Physician recruiting involves several visits by different physicians in order to recruit one physician. Our third area of importance was facilities. As I said, in 1969, the first physician's office building was completed. In 72, we began construction on an additional building, and in 1980, we built a 3rd addition to the physician's building. In addition to office space, the office building became a financial part of our recruiting plan. First, through the finances of the office building, we guaranteed a physician their first-year salary. Part of the first-year guarantee included free rent in the office space. Of the 30-plus guarantees, we only paid $365 to one doctor. All physicians' recruiting expenses were paid from the building account. No hospital funds were used for the construction, management, or recruiting expenses. Final point in our article, physician visit. The visiting physician, most of all, wants to talk to existing physicians and in particular, recent additions to the medical staff. Existing physicians must be willing to spend time during the day and evenings with the prospect. In addition, the prospect's spouse is interested in meeting persons of the same age and persons from the medical community, schools, and other community organizations. Sometimes it is the spouse that must be sold and not the doc. The Hastings method of recruiting had a secret weapon when it came to recruiting the spouse. I did not mention the weapon in the MHA article or a talk I gave to the Michigan Hospital Association's Smaller Hospital Conference. That weapon was a person by the name of Joanne Fluke. Joanne would organize and prepare a lovely Saturday luncheon for the spouse. She would have existing physician spouses, an educator, and other appropriate ladies of the community. It was a great opportunity for the spouse to meet ladies in her age group and ask questions about living in Hastings. Now, you must understand that our recruiting from 68 to the mid-80s was a male physician with a female spouse. We were not opposed to female doctors. There just were not many coming out of the training programs. But in the 1980s, we recruited our first female doc. And Joanne said, "I'm not having a luncheon for her husband." I said, "Not to worry. I found out he's a CPA and he likes to play golf, so I'm having our chief financial officer taking him to lunch and the golf course." By 1985, we had recruited 36 physicians. But from 75 to 85, 9 physicians had left the Pennock Hospital staff. 2 retired and 2 died. Both of those who died were under the age of 44. One, an Air National Guard plane crash, and one of cancer. One left for teaching at the Kalamazoo Family Practice Residency Program. One left for a position at Upjohn. Thank you, Kalamazoo, you took 2 of our doctors. One left for an anesthesiology residency, who then later returned to Hastings. One left for a government clinic in the Sun Belt, and one physician to a large metropolitan area. Our recruiting efforts resulted in 2 general surgeons, 2 orthopedic surgeons, 1 OB/GYN, 1 ophthalmologist, 1 urologist, 1 pathologist full-time, 4 full-time emergency room doctors, no longer requiring doctors to cover the emergency room from the golf course, 2 internal medicine, 1 anesthesiologist, 1 certified registered nurse anesthetist, and from 1 part-time radiologist to 3 radiologists providing full-time coverage between Pennock and Allegan Hospital. All recruited physicians but 1 were medical school and residency trained in the U.S. The 1 physician went to medical school in London, England, and residency in Flint, Michigan. In addition to specialists, we recruited 9 residency-trained family physicians, including a package of 4 of family practice physicians from the Sparrow Hospital MSU Family Practice Residency, Lansing, Michigan. In the early 70s, things were going well, except we have a problem with accounts receivable. We had little cash. We had a surplus, but no cash. The Medicare billings were handled by Michigan Blue Cross, and it was taking Blue Cross a long period of time to process a claim. So every other Thursday, I went to visit my friendly banker and borrowed enough money to meet the payroll. Our collateral for the loan was the accounts receivable for Medicare Blue Cross. Then one day, I learned that Travelers Insurance Company was processing Medicare billings in a very short time. We switched to Travelers, and soon Medicare billings were current, and the hospital had excess cash. So then we called our friendly banker to see what rate of interest we could get on a CD. In 1978, with additional physicians and increase in patient census, it was necessary to build an addition to the hospital. This included a first floor emergency room suite, second floor pediatric suite, and third floor intensive care unit. And then in 1981, pay attention. I got the off. That's the third floor addition. Ground floor ER, the second floor is peds, and the top is the intensive care unit. And that's the third addition to the physician center. You may remember the first two were much lower. They were side by side. When we built the third addition, the first two weren't built to hold a third floor, so we built a mushroom by putting supports outside of the first two additions to support the third floor. And the whole thing really came together quite nice. Well, let's review. In 30 days, reduce expenses 10%. In 30 days, develop plans for a physician's office building. 1969, built the first office building. 2 years later, 71, built an addition to the office building. Bank loans every other Thursday for payroll. Later, purchasing CDs from the bank with excess cash. Physician recruiting was successful, and in 1978, completed in 80, three-story addition to the hospital. By the late 70s and 80s, we had physician residents from the Sparrow Hospital MSU Family Practice Program spending their 30-day elective time at Pennock Hospital. The hospital had purchased the house next door for future expansion, and we used it to house the physicians. The residents had a meal card with unlimited points for 3 meals a day in the hospital cafeteria and free housing. We also provided the hospital cleaning staff and other hospital support staff. In addition, we provided an internship program for Albion College students interested in healthcare management. They also stayed in the house next door with the same benefits. Well, what was going on at the home front? In our early years in Hastings, before our Pennock Hospital life, Joanne was teaching mostly as a substitute. When I became the hospital director, CEO, Joanne became a volunteer. In fact, I called her a professional volunteer. She was on the Hastings Public School Board, the chairperson and longtime board member of Berry County United Way, Friends of the Library Board, the Hospital Gift Shop Board, Eaton and Berry County Family and Children's Services Board, and Battle Creek Binder Park Zoo Board. Now, when you are on the zoo board, the animals are more appreciative than the parents when you are on the school board. During my Pentecostal days, I was on the Michigan Hospital Board for 10 years and served as chairman 1983-84. Michigan Hospital Association has its annual conference at the Graham Hotel, Mackinac Island. And when you are the incoming chairman, you stay in the governor's suite. And when you are the chairman, you stay in the presidential suite. Both are nice digs. You ought to stay there sometime. In 1983, as vice chair of Michigan Hospital Association, I testified before a U.S. Senate committee. Then, in the mid-70s, I was invited to serve on the Hastings City Bank Board, the bank I borrowed money for the payroll. I was invited to serve on the Hastings Mutual Insurance Company Board. I was in the Hastings Rotary Club and president. Served several years on the board of the Southwest Michigan Hospital Council and president. Served on the Albion College Alumni Board and the Western Michigan University Alumni Board. And in 1908, I served on the Western Michigan University Presidential Search Committee, which resulted in Elson Floyd becoming the president of Western. During this time, Chris and Jill were growing up. Oh, that's all at the annual meeting, giving my acceptance speech. And here is when I'm welcoming in the new chairman, and they gave me a hat. It had two bills. One bill went left, one bill went right. And the hat said, "I am their leader. Which way did they go?" And then that's when I testified before the Senate. Chris and Jill were growing up, sweet young things. Then they grew a bit more. And then we had a small cottage at Wall Lake, 13 miles south of Hastings, where we spent summers. The kids had a good time. That's the 4th of July. That's our two granddaughters, the oldest right there. And the kids at Wall Lake all sailed. We had sailing every Sunday afternoon during the week. And then their big thing. We had one man who had a powerful boat. And we would work there. I think we've got 11. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we managed to get 12 up one time. Now the boys were a little tough on the girls because when they were picking out people to be in this big ski show, they made the girls weigh in. But the boys didn't have to weigh in. Oh, my parents had a cabin up north on the Osable River. In fact, that's where Joanne and I spent our honeymoon because we didn't have any money. And the folks had stocked the refrigerator. So we spent a honeymoon at a cabin where the new wife can do all the cooking. And that's how Chris and his family had decorated the cabin for Christmas and New Year's Eve. That's a picture, the top picture, 1961. Starting on the left, my brother-in-law, and then George and his wife is down too. She's on the end there. That's a couple who my parents bought the cabin with. So you got brother-in-law, George, my mother, Margaret, who's married to George, my father, my sister, Joanne, and Chris. 1921, when the kids were there for Thanksgiving, and these were always Thanksgiving pictures, they restaged the picture with second and third generation at the cabin. I have received comments that small hospitals do not provide quality care. My reply is, some hospitals do not provide medical care, and some provide excellent care. At the same time, some large hospitals do not provide quality care, and some large hospitals provide excellent care. Lately, with the merger of hospitals and healthcare systems, the expression is, bigger is not always better. In 1985, the Bronson Healthcare Group put together an affiliation of Bronson as the large hospital and Allegan, Sturgis, Marshall, and Hastings Hospital as the smaller hospitals. The key word is affiliation. The purpose was not to take over the smaller hospitals, but to provide an organization where Bronson could assist the smaller hospitals to receive services that the hospital could not acquire on their own. The organization was called Hospital Network. And that emblem is actually an HNI, but I wanted it to look like something medical, and the man who designed that I thought did a good job. It looks like an EKG, but it still says HNI. Russ Sneen, chairman, and Pat Luck, president of Bronson Healthcare Group, contacted me in late '85 and stated they would like me to become the first president of HNI. Joanne and I talked it over and decided it was time to try something different. Joanne was tired of 20 years of physician recruiting. An organization like HNI had not been done in Michigan, so why not try it? All the hospitals had put in a sum of money to support the organization for the first 2 years. After that, I needed to have an income stream to support the organization and to provide services to the smaller hospital. Well, 2 years is better than 30 days. 3 months after starting HNI, to our surprise, Michigan Business Magazine asked if they could do an article on HNI. It was called Institutionalized Networking. United they stand, divided they cost. It was a really big surprise that someone like Michigan Business knew about us and within 3 months of our beginning wanted to run an article. One of the first successful shared services was connecting capital equipment purchasing of smaller hospitals to Bronson's capital equipment purchasing. A large hospital can bargain for lower prices on equipment because they're usually buying more than one piece of equipment. Large hospital might buy 3 pieces of x-ray, smaller hospital probably 1. The smaller hospital has very little bargaining power. So we combined the smaller hospital capital equipment purchasing with Bronson. So it helped both sides. The smaller hospital was now part of a bargaining situation where maybe we're going to buy 3 or 4 pieces of equipment, and you can really get discounts with these suppliers. They give you the first one about sticker price, next one 15%, next one 30%. By the time you get down to the 3rd or 4th, it is about half price. Okay, I'm almost done. Other services we looked at were, and they're on the previous page, electronic billing, but the main thing we wanted to get into was mobile CT and later mobile MRI. We wanted to start a mobile CT for the smaller hospitals, but had no knowledge of operating such. I learned of a company in Cleveland, Ohio called MCIC They were a successful mobile imaging company in Ohio and Indiana, but were unable to acquire business in Michigan. Because of my involvement with the Michigan Hospital Association, I had access to CEOs throughout Michigan, and through them could acquire an appointment with the director of radiology department. So MCIC in Cleveland, HNI in Kalamazoo formed a joint venture called MCIC HNI Imaging Services. We started small with one CT. After a few years, we had several CTs, and a few years more, we had 4 mobile MRIs. Today, the joint venture has 14 mobile MRIs in both the lower and upper peninsula and several mobile CTs. The other service we investigated in 1998-99, my last year at HNI, was disinfecting medical waste. When I say medical waste, I am talking about the red plastic bags you see in hospitals and other medical facilities. I had learned of a company in New Jersey that was manufacturing a machine that utilized microwaves to process and disinfect medical waste. At the time, medical waste was incinerated, and the government was getting strict on the furnaces in hospitals that were exhausting polluted air. Before I retired, HNI MCIC joint venture decided to go into the business of disinfecting medical waste. Today, it is a big business. Trucks pick up red bag medical waste from hospitals, dental offices, clinics, and any other service that produces medical waste. They bring it to the processing building in Portage, and after processing the medical waste, it is taken to a landfill. Hospital Network has grown from a 1985 Bronson concept to a 1986 with Little Richard and a shared secretary to today now called Alliance HMI Healthcare Services, servicing 60 hospitals, many dental offices, many clinics with over 130 employees. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Before I ask for questions, I'm going to allow people to leave who must leave at this time. Thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
That was really, I've tracked that through my own career as he was going. I was thinking where I was and what was happening, and advanced Packard and Fortran language, he didn't mention that. All the way through, it was very, very, very interesting. And I do want to say that next month we're going to have Jay Parsons. He's doing 2 years teaching English and protesting in the form of the imperial city of Hue, South Vietnam. So, Hue, thank you. I didn't know. I'm glad you told me. Hue. And then in October we've got Ellie Crocker. She has not given me a title yet. She's a new resident. And I also wanted to invite anyone else who wants to do their life story to come and talk to me, and we can decide on a month. Usually we book out about 6 months, so feel free to come up and see me. Now, any questions for Richard Jan?
I don't have a question, but I think we should applaud the woman behind the man and a panel behind.
Thank you, that's a great idea, Joanne. Fluke. Wonderful, thank you. She told me earlier it was difficult with such a driven man. Any other questions?
Nope.
Thanks very much for coming. We'll see you next month.
Thank you, Ashley.